When my brother and I got into a car accident, my heart was ruptured and I needed emergency surgery. But my mother, the hospital director, gathered all available doctors to my brother's room. He only had minor scrapes, yet she ordered full body scans for him. While I lay there bleeding out, I begged her to help me. She snapped, visibly annoyed. Can't you stop fighting for attention for once? Your brother almost injured a bone. In the end, I died on the operating table. But after the news of my death breaks, my mother, who has always hated me, completely loses her mind. In the final 3 minutes of my life, my soul drifted to my mother's side. She was sitting beside my younger brother, Felix Goodman's hospital bed, her face filled with worry as she prayed, "Felix, please don't scare me like this. Wake up, okay?" My father stood nearby, his face twisted in fury. If Sean had done his job and protected him, Felix wouldn't be in this state. Just wait. I stood and watched at the side, bitterness rising in my chest. Dad, there's no need for that. I'm almost dead. Not that you guys would care. At that moment, the doctors were gathered around Felix's bed in a circle. After confirming that his injuries were only scrapes and nothing major, one of the older doctors finally dared to bring me up. He asked cautiously, "Ms. Blanchard, are you sure we shouldn't check on Sean? His injuries from the car crash seem very serious." Mom's gentle expression instantly turned into one of disgust as she roared, "What's he trying to pull now? Playing dead? Doesn't he realize what he's done to his brother?" I stared at her, stunned. Though my heart had already stopped, it still somehow throbbed with pain. I was their son too. Do they really not care about me at all? Suddenly, Mom picked up her phone and dialed my number. A nurse brought the phone to my ear, and instead of hearing the concern I had hoped for, all I heard was contempt. "Sean Goodman, when are you going to crawl out of bed and apologize to your brother?" My heart instantly turned cold as whatever hope I had left withered away. Of course, she never cared about me. Come to think of it, when I was first brought into the hospital, I had begged Mom to save me, but all she said was, "Do you have to fight for attention even at a time like this? Don't you realize that your brother nearly broke a bone?" Then, she turned and walked away without a second glance, taking the entire medical team with her to tend to Felix. How could she have the capacity to love me? The nurse, unable to bear it any longer, took the phone and said, "Miss Blanchard, Sean can't hang on much longer." But Mom, still convinced that I was faking it, let out a mocking laugh. "How much did that brat pay you to act along with him? I can't believe he's capable of something like this." Just as she finished speaking, Felix, who had been acting unconscious the whole time, finally woke up. He faked a weak voice and asked, "Mom, Dad, how's Sean?" As Mom looked at the obedient, considerate Felix lying on the bed, her expression twisted into even deeper contempt. "Sean, why can't you be more like your brother? He's hurt because of you, and yet he's still worried about you. If you don't get here in the next 3 minutes to apologize, don't bother ever showing your face to me again." She then hung up, her chest heaving with anger. Dad, standing beside her, looked clearly displeased. "Why bother calling him? Isn't it enough that he nearly got Felix killed?" Felix lowered his head, trying to hide the smug look in his eyes. He put on a guilty expression before looking up at them. "Mom, Dad, don't be mad at him. Sean has just never forgiven me for getting the overseas scholarship instead of him. I understand why he hates me." I couldn't help but laugh. Even in my death, Felix was still trying to sow discord between me and my parents. However, my parents would never see through him. In their eyes, he would always be the better son, and they would never think about the true reason for the car accident. Just as expected, Mom's face immediately turned cold. "What's the point of sending someone that's selfish to study abroad? Who knows how twisted he'd become after being abroad?" Felix gently said, "Mom, don't be angry. I'm sure Sean has his reasons." Mom's expression immediately softened. "Felix, you're too kind. That's why Sean keeps taking advantage of you." That was always Felix's strength, knowing exactly what to say to win our parents' hearts. I knew that even if I stood right in front of them and told them all of Felix's cruel behavior over the years, they'd only slap me across the face and accuse me of making things up, saying that I was just jealous of him. After all these years, I had gotten used to it. In the middle of their conversation, my older sister, Ashley Goodman, burst into the room. Her footsteps were hurried as she anxiously rushed to check on Felix. The moment she heard about the accident, she immediately flew in from another state without a second thought, and just like my parents, she only cared about Felix. Once she confirmed he was okay, Ashley let out a sigh of relief before fuming, "I've always said that Sean is a curse to our family. Ever since Felix was born, he's been hurting him again and again." Felix took the opportunity to act pitiful. "Don't be angry, Ash. I'm sure Sean didn't mean to hurt me." The whole family burst into an uproar upon hearing this. Dad slammed the table. "What? He actually caused the car accident to hurt you?" Mom clenched her teeth. "Bastard, I'll make him pay." Felix flinched as though he realized things had gone too far and they might start questioning the story. He hurriedly said to them, "Please, don't be mad at Sean, okay? Maybe I remembered it wrong. No matter what, he's still my brother. He wouldn't do something like that." Ashley gently tapped his forehead. "You're just too naive. You have no idea how evil some people can be." At this point, Mom chimed in, "It's truly a blessing to have a son like you. All right, I'll listen to you. Let's forget about that ungrateful brat and focus on getting you well again." The warm golden light of the setting sun spilled across Felix's hospital bed. Watching the four of them together, a happy, united family, I felt an indescribable ache in my chest. In that moment, I realized how out of place my soul truly was. It was as if I wasn't one of them at all, like I was just a stray dog that wandered into their home. I wanted to leave, but my spirit was bound tightly to Mom's side. I couldn't speak. I could only watch and endure their contempt in silence. A few days later, under the family's meticulous care, Felix was discharged from the hospital. Mom was busy packing his things, while Dad had already parked the car right outside the hospital door. Afraid Felix might have to walk even a single extra step, Ashley wouldn't even let him put on his shoes by himself. On the way home, Mom muttered irritably, "Sean is really something else. He didn't even visit his brother at the hospital even once, let alone apologize. I'm going to teach him a lesson once we get home." Dad glanced at Mom and said coldly, "I told you keeping him at home was asking for trouble. Sooner or later, something bad was bound to happen." Hearing the words, "teach him a lesson," left me feeling a complicated mix of emotions. Long buried memories came flooding back into my mind. Since I was young, Mom had always favored Felix. I was expected to always give in to him. Then, in elementary school, Dad had beaten me so badly that I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days, just because I fought with Felix over a toy car. It was my favorite toy, even though it had come as a freebie along with the gift Dad bought for Felix during a business trip. It had become my most cherished possession. Felix, who already had boxes full of toy cars, insisted on fighting me for that one. In the tug of war, he suddenly screamed and burst into tears. Mom rushed over, distressed, and hugged him while crying and yelling at me. "Sean Goodman, your brother has already suffered so much because of you. What more do you want from him?" It wasn't me. Before I could even explain, Felix squeezed out a few tears and said, "Mom, don't be angry. It was my fault. I shouldn't have made trouble by fighting with Sean over a toy." When Dad got home and saw that scene, he immediately pulled me aside and started beating me. "Cold-hearted kid like you doesn't deserve to stay in this house. Keeping you here is just waiting for a disaster to happen." I cried and begged him to stop, but the more I cried, the more convinced Dad was that I was faking it, and the harder he hit. Mom and Ashley just stood at a distance, watching coldly. It was as if I was their enemy, and they wouldn't be satisfied until Dad beat me to death. From that day on, whenever I made Felix cry, it would mean receiving scoldings or beatings from my parents. Eventually, I stopped fighting Felix for their love, stopped trying to explain, and stopped trying to get close. And now, they left me cold and lifeless on the operating table. As soon as they got home, Felix flopped onto the couch. The moment he said he was hungry, Ashley eagerly went into the kitchen, excited to show off her newfound cooking skills. Normally too delicate to cook, she was now scrolling through her phone for nutritious meal plans, afraid of causing Felix to have an upset stomach. Dad presented him with the latest luxury gaming console, saying it was a welcome home gift to celebrate his cheating death. Mom had already cleaned Felix's room thoroughly and filled it with air-purifying plants, saying that fresh air was good for his recovery. Felix simply lounged on the couch and played games, yet that was enough to tug at the heartstrings of the entire family. Meanwhile, my soul was trailing quietly behind them. This house, once so familiar, now felt ice cold. Suddenly, the doorbell rang. Standing at the door was someone I knew all too well, my girlfriend, Caitlin Winter. She stepped inside and immediately fussed over Felix's condition. "Mr. and Mrs. Goodman, I heard Felix was discharged today. I brought some supplements for him." Felix instantly dropped the game controller, putting on a shy smile. "Caitlin, you didn't have to. I'm already feeling much better." Caitlin flashed him a sweet smile. Usually cold and aloof with me, she was now gentle and caring with Felix. I watched her, an unfamiliar feeling rising in my chest. Suddenly she asked, "Where's Sean?" If she hadn't brought me up, I doubt anyone would have even remembered I existed. When my name was mentioned, Mom's face darkened. "Why are you bringing up that ungrateful brat? After I scolded him the other day, he didn't even bother coming home. It's just as well. Since he likes staying out so much, he can stay away forever. The house feels peaceful without him causing trouble every day." Caitlin quickly nodded. "It's better if he doesn't come back. We don't want him disturbing Felix's rest." Ashley walked out holding some supplements and said playfully, "So, have you decided when to break up with Sean? If you don't move fast, someone else might snatch Felix away." Caitlin lowered her head shyly. "I was actually planning to talk to Felix about it today." A stinging sensation welled up in my throat. I let out a self-mocking laugh and turned away, not wanting to watch any longer. I had long grown used to the feeling of being unloved anyway. After dinner, Mom grew irritable for some reason. She returned to her room alone and began searching through her phone. I walked over to look. She was looking for my number, calling it again and again, but of course, there was no answer. Eventually, she slammed her phone down in frustration. "You won't even answer my calls now? Do you think anyone actually cares about you?" I wanted to tell her, "I'm dead. There's no way for me to answer your call," but then she called the nurse from the hospital. "Did Sean tell you what kind of stunt he's trying to pull? Tell him to stop being so shameless and come back to apologize to his brother. Then, maybe I'll consider letting him come home." There was a brief silence on the other end before the reply came. "Miss Blanchard, Sean passed away a week ago. His heart—"
The nurse's voice trembled on the other end. "Miss Blanchard. Sean passed away a week ago." Mom froze. "What did you say?" "His heart ruptured during the accident. We tried everything, but there weren't enough surgeons available." The room fell silent. Even I stopped breathing out of habit. The nurse continued carefully. "All available specialists have been transferred to Felix Goodman's room under your orders." The phone slipped from Mom's hand. It crashed onto the floor. No. For the first time in my life, I saw fear on her face. Real fear. Dad walked over. "What's wrong?" Mom looked at him blankly. Her lips trembled. "Sean is dead." The entire living room became deathly quiet. Ashley's bowl shattered against the floor. Felix's smile froze. Dad laughed stiffly. "That's impossible. The brat is probably hiding somewhere trying to make us feel guilty." But Mom wasn't listening anymore. With shaking hands she picked up the phone and called the hospital director's office. Then the emergency department. Then the morgue. One call after another. Each answer was exactly the same. Sean Goodman. Male. 23 years old. Deceased. Date of death, 7 days ago. Cause of death, cardiac rupture following severe trauma. By the 10th confirmation, Mom collapsed into a chair. Her face had gone completely white. The room spun around her. Suddenly she remembered something. The operating room. My blood-covered face. My trembling hand grabbing her sleeve. "Mom, please." And her response. "Stop fighting for attention." The memory struck her like a bullet. "No." A strangled sob escaped her throat. "No, no, no." Dad's expression gradually changed. The certainty faded from his eyes. "What do you mean dead?" Mom looked up at him. Tears streamed down her face. "He died that night." "He really died." The room exploded. Ashley staggered backward. "That's impossible." "I would have known." Mom laughed hysterically. "Known? You never even asked about him." Ashley froze. Dad's face turned ugly. "Then why didn't the hospital notify us?" The nurse's earlier words echoed in Mom's ears. "Family notification attempts declined." Because she herself had ordered the staff to stop indulging Sean's attention-seeking behavior. Every road leading back to me had been blocked by her own hands. She buried her face and screamed. 4 hours. The sound echoed through the house. Meanwhile, Felix sat motionless. For the first time, genuine panic appeared in his eyes. Because Sean was supposed to come home. Sean was supposed to take the blame. Sean was supposed to continue being the family's punching bag. Dead people couldn't do that. And dead people had a dangerous habit. The truth tended to follow them. The next morning, Mom rushed to the hospital. I followed silently. When she reached the records department, she demanded every file related to my accident. Every second. Every report. Every camera recording. She watched the footage. The crash replayed on the screen. Again. And again. And again. Then she saw it. The moment before impact. Felix had grabbed the steering wheel. Not me. He had jerked it violently toward oncoming traffic. The car had lost control. My desperate attempt to correct the wheel came afterward. The video ended. Mom sat there unmoving. The world seemed to stop. The accident. The scholarship. The toy car. Every story Felix had ever told. For the first time, she questioned all of it. A week later she ordered a full investigation. What she discovered shattered her completely. Over 20 years. Every incident. Every accusation. Every tear. Every punishment. All of it started with Felix. He had framed me. Manipulated situations. Destroyed my belongings. Lied. And every single time my family had chosen to believe him. Not once had they chosen me. Not once. Mom spent an entire night alone in my old bedroom. She found report cards with perfect grades. Award certificates. Letters I had written but never sent. One notebook fell from a shelf. Inside was a childish sentence written by an 8-year-old boy. I hope Mom loves me someday. The page was stained with old tears. Mom broke. Completely. She hugged the notebook to her chest and wailed until sunrise. Outside the room, Dad sat against the wall. Silent. Ashley's eyes were red from crying. None of them slept. Because for the first time, they finally understood something. I had never wanted their money. Their gifts. Their praise. I had only wanted to be loved. And they had spent 23 years refusing. The next morning, another discovery arrived. The life insurance beneficiary on my policy. Not my family. Not Caitlin. Not anyone from the Goodman family. It was an orphanage. The same orphanage where I volunteered every weekend. The children had cried harder at my funeral than my own family had. When Mom saw that, she finally realized. Something horrifying. The people who shared no blood with me had loved me more than the people who shared my name. And that realization destroyed whatever remained of her sanity. The funeral was held 3 days later. Rain poured from the gray sky as if even heaven was mourning. Rows of black umbrellas filled the cemetery. Mom stood beside my coffin like a statue. Her eyes were swollen from days of crying. Dad looked 20 years older. Ashley's face was pale and hollow. Only Felix seemed strangely uncomfortable. He kept glancing around as if searching for an escape. Then the first unexpected guests arrived. My college professor. Several classmates. Former co-workers. The elderly owner of a small bookstore I visited every week. The director of the orphanage. One by one, they stepped forward. One by one, they spoke about me. Sean stayed after class every day to tutor struggling students. Sean secretly paid my rent when I lost my job. He volunteered every weekend. He donated most of his bonus every Christmas. He helped repair our orphanage playground with his own hands. Each sentence struck my family like a hammer. Because none of them knew any of it. Not a single thing. Mom's shoulders began shaking. Dad lowered his head. Ashley covered her mouth. They had spent years calling me selfish. Yet the people gathered here described someone kind, generous, and patient. A stranger. Or perhaps the real Sean Goodman. The son they never bothered to know. Then the orphanage director stepped forward holding a worn envelope. I believe Sean wanted his family to have this. Mom's hands trembled as she opened it. Inside was a letter. My letter. The one I had written 6 months before my death. Mom unfolded the paper. Her voice cracked as she began reading. Dear Mom, Dad, and Ashley. If you're reading this, then I finally found the courage to leave. Please don't worry. I'm not running away because I hate you. Actually, I stopped hating you a long time ago. I think I'm just tired. Tired of trying. Tired of explaining. Tired of hoping that one day you'll look at me the same way you look at Felix. Maybe some people are simply born without a place in their family. That's okay. I hope Felix stays healthy. I hope Ashley gets the promotion she wants. I hope Dad's business succeeds. And Mom. I hope you're happy. Mom's voice completely broke. She couldn't continue. Ashley took the letter. Tears streamed down her face. She read the final lines. I don't blame any of you anymore. I just wish, before I leave, that someone would believe me once. Love. Sean. Silence. Absolute silence. Even the rain seemed quieter. Then Mom collapsed. She fell to her knees beside my coffin. Her scream echoed across the cemetery. Sean. For 23 years she had never called my name with love. Now it was too late. Far too late. A week after the funeral, the police investigation into the accident concluded. The findings were clear. Felix had intentionally grabbed the steering wheel. Witness statements, vehicle data, and camera footage all matched. When detectives arrived at the Goodman residence, Felix finally panicked. He dropped to his knees. Mom. Dad. Please. It was an accident. I didn't mean for Sean to die. But nobody moved. Nobody defended him. Nobody protected him. The same family that once worshipped him now stared at him with horror. Mom looked at him as if she had never seen him before. You killed him. Felix burst into tears. I'm your son. Mom's expression twisted. And Sean wasn't. The words hit harder than any slap. Felix was arrested that afternoon. As police led him away, he kept looking back. Begging. Crying. Calling for help. No one answered. Not this time. The house became silent after that. Painfully silent. Mom stopped going to parties. Dad stopped caring about work. Ashley moved back home. Every room was filled with reminders of me. Photos. Books. Old belongings. Regrets. Endless regrets. Then one evening Mom entered my room again. While cleaning a drawer, she found a small box. Inside were dozens of handmade birthday cards. Mother's Day cards. Christmas cards. Every single one had been returned unopened. Some still had childish handwriting. Some had little drawings. One card from when I was 7 years old read. Mom, I made this myself. I love you. Mom stared at it. Then another. And another. Soon she was surrounded by years of abandoned love. All the affection I had tried to give. All the chances she had thrown away. That night she locked herself in my room. Nobody heard from her until morning. When Ashley finally opened the door, she found Mom asleep at my desk. My photographs were spread around her. Clutched against her chest was the little Mother's Day card. Tear stains covered the paper. And for the first time in her life, the hospital director who could save countless strangers had finally understood the one life she should have protected most. Her sons. The son she had spent 23 years destroying. The son she could never bring back. Months passed. The Goodman family became a shadow of what it once was. The grand house remained spotless. The expensive furniture remained untouched. The luxury cars sat in the garage. Yet the place felt empty. Dead. Every morning Mom still set an extra plate at breakfast before remembering there was nobody left to eat from it. Every morning. Without fail. At first Ashley would quietly remove it. Eventually she stopped. Neither of them had the strength. Dad threw himself into work, hoping endless meetings would drown out the guilt. It didn't. Some nights he would wake up screaming after dreaming about the day he beat a 10-year-old Sean for crying over a toy car. Other nights he dreamed of the hospital. Of a blood-covered boy reaching for help. Then disappearing forever. No amount of money could buy sleep anymore. No amount of success could silence the memories. One rainy afternoon Ashley finally opened a storage room that had been locked for years. She was looking for old documents. Instead, she found boxes. Dozens of them. Every box belonged to me. School projects. Drawings. Certificates. Journals. She sat on the floor and started reading. Hours passed. Then another. And another. Each page felt like a knife. There were entries from elementary school. Mom hugged Felix today. Maybe she'll hug me tomorrow. Another. Dad said he's proud of Felix. I studied really hard. Maybe he'll be proud of me too. Another. Ashley promised to watch my school performance. She forgot. Ashley broke down sobbing. She could barely breathe. Because every page contained the same thing. Hope. Hope that they would love him. Hope that never came. That evening she carried the journals downstairs. Mom and Dad read them together. None of them slept. Again. The next day, Mom did something nobody expected. She resigned. The famous hospital director who had spent decades building her reputation submitted her resignation letter without warning. Reporters swarmed her. Colleagues tried to stop her. She ignored them all. When asked why she was leaving, she simply replied, "I failed the patient who needed me most." Then she walked away. The story spread quickly. People learned what had happened. How a hospital director had abandoned her critically injured son. How she had sent doctors away from him. How he died waiting. Public sympathy vanished. Condemnation followed. Her reputation crumbled almost overnight. But she didn't fight it. Because every accusation was true. Meanwhile Dad started visiting the orphanage that I had supported. At first the children didn't like him. They knew who he was. They knew what happened. One little girl even asked him directly, "Why didn't you love Sean?" Dad couldn't answer. He sat there for nearly an hour before finally breaking down in tears. The child awkwardly handed him a tissue. It was the same thing I used to do. The realization nearly shattered him. Years passed. Slowly. Painfully. One winter evening Mom visited my grave alone. Her hair had turned noticeably gray. She looked older than her age. Tired. Broken. She placed fresh flowers beside my headstone. Then sat down. Just like she did every week. "Sean." Her voice was soft. "I met one of your students today." She smiled sadly. "He became a doctor. He said he chose medicine because of you." Silence. A cold wind passed through the cemetery. Mom looked at my photograph. "I finally understand." More tears appeared. "They all loved you. The children. Your friends. Your co-workers. Even strangers. The only people who didn't." Her voice cracked. "Were us." She lowered her head. "I spent 23 years believing the wrong child. I spent 23 years hurting the one who loved me most." Her shoulders shook. "I'm sorry." Those words came every visit. Every week. Every month. Every year. But apologies belong to the living. And I was long gone. As the sun began setting, golden light spread across the cemetery. For a moment, Mom smiled through her tears. Because she remembered something from one of my journals. A line written when I was 16. "Maybe one day Mom will understand me." She pressed a trembling hand against my headstone. "I understand now, Sean. I finally understand." The wind rustled the flowers. The cemetery stood quiet. And somewhere beyond the reach of regret, beyond grief and guilt and sorrow, the boy who had spent his entire life begging to be loved was finally free from the family that had only learned his worth after losing him forever.